spy has a gun. Yes, it is a thing oft repeated on this channel, and by a lot of my younger fans as I take advantage of how impressionable they are to spread the message. Anyway, it's known that Spy has 5 different revolvers, and before you say it, no, reskins don't count, but did you know that he almost had a 6th? And this one is really strange, because I have not seen basically anybody talk about this. Like, at all? Maybe there's just not enough talk about removed or scrapped weapons in this community, but discovering this was quite a shock to me. In fact, it was actually my friend Care Bear who found it by accident. He's been getting into game development in the Unity engine and wanted to implement movement mechanics similar to that of the Source engine. Of course, because TF2 had leaked code, he decided to dig around there to start. But in the process of doing so, he stumbled across leftover code for a removed revolver for Spy. This wasn't just some weapon reskin, this really was a strange case to be. Okay, I'm sorry for that. But TF2's source code has been leaked since 2020, and the fact that nobody has even discovered this relic in the near 4 years it's been accessible, alongside all the other incredible discoveries that have just resulted from looking into the code, just straight up perplexes me. We keep finding out things about this game we had no clue about. Okay, so the gun itself. First, let's start with the name, which is actually separated into 2 parts, the first of which being Slew, which translates to slow in Greek, of all things. It doesn't seem that clear why Greek specifically. I mean, the silhouette of a revolver doesn't even look Greek, but that's because it's just a mishmash of other revolvers I made in SFM, because the thing seems to have never got its own model, only using the Enforcer as a placeholder. It seemed as if it didn't get too far into the testing phase until it was ultimately scrapped, which leads us into the stats. Looking into what it supposedly did, it's indeed kind of interesting. It had a 25% damage penalty, halved clip size, and no random crits, but upon shooting another player, that player would get marked. It worked in a similar way that the Fano War did, in that it only worked on one player at a time, but instead of marking that player for death, it would instead allow the spy to see that player through walls, with the same outline used for post-spawn wall hacks. However, this wouldn't just show the spy that player's location like other people have suggested when thinking of a new spy revolver, but it would also be able to see that player's health, ammo of their current weapon, and even their Uber charge if they were playing as medic. That had the potential to be stupidly powerful. Imagine you're playing a Highlander and trying to keep track of the enemy Uber. You could send your spy into the back line to keep an eye on the med so he can see enemy Uber while looking right at the medic, but you could also get them to just equip this gun, shoot the medic once, and then easily have him feed you information on not only his Uber percentage, but his actual position so you could more easily kill him, or knowing when his health is low. That is insane. Potentially meta-defining. Sure, it leans into the idea of Spy being a support class that feeds info to his team, but very little risk is required on the Spy's part to continue feeding that info once he gets a single shot on his desired target. And again, it only required 1 shot. At least with the Cloak and Dagger, the Spy has to have the medic in their view to see this info. That would dominate the Highlander meta. Maybe even in pubs from even semi-coordinated teams, or even a spy waiting for an opportunity to destroy a nest. Sure, it sacrifices potential firepower, but there's barely any risk to using its main upside, since the first shot is always perfectly accurate and, alright, I see why it was removed. Yeah, I know, this idea is insanely cool sounding, but the thing about game design is that an idea may sound cool on paper, but may not work well in practice, especially after the novelty of a new thing wears off. You can't just add ideas into a game just because you feel like it. That's why pretty much all games will have unused or removed content for one reason or another. But it's always cool to see relics of these ideas that didn't make the cut, as a fun bit of hidden preserved history. But back to the name. Why is it Greek, and why does it translate to slow? Well, it gets even weirder, because the second half of this name is the word frepa, which translates to the word flirt, but not in Greek, but in Corsican. What country speaks Corsican? France. Corsican, also called Corsican, is a Romance language closely related to the Tuscan variety of... What? Okay, this took me a while to wrap my head around, but I think the combined name is referencing 2 things about the character of Spy. First off, Spy is quite the gentleman. Based on stereotypes and how the spy presents himself, I can imagine he would indeed be quite attractive to ladies. Or men, maybe. I don't know. However, he also seems to be quite selective with his women. And considering how fond he is of his wife in Meet the Spy, I can imagine he actually does value having a proper relationship with someone, and not just disappearing on them. Wait, this is Spy, what am I talking about? But my point is that he likes long-term relationships, which is why the first part is the word slow, because he sort of is a slow and gradual method of flirting. He's not pushy. He takes his time. He's respectful. But why is it in 2 languages? Well, I believe this alludes to the fact that Spy seems to know many different languages. While he clearly knows French and English, he has lines where he uses words from other languages as well.
Prego, my appreciation, amigo.
While he's never been heard speaking Greek, it seems that the name of this weapon hints to the fact he also knows how to speak it. Considering he's known to be good at infiltration and espionage, it makes sense that he'd be skilled in many languages. So, it's a gun that gave the spy war hacks and allowed him to feed info to his team, but got removed likely due to the small amount of risk it actually required, being left in the depths of TF2's code. And its name alluded to how attractive the spy was, how he valued long-term relationships, and how he was fluent in multiple languages. I think. This is all just my best guess from the info we could dig up. I don't really see any other way this could go, but perhaps the true meaning of this gun can be found if you spell it backwards.